Have you ever seen something that you shouldn't have? Or has there ever been a time where you sent something to people you also shouldn't have done? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then I am pleased to announce that you've come to the right TTT talk. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining in on the third presentation as part of the TTT series, where I'll be going through user filters on Tableau server. My name is Andrew, and that's me smiling while having my picture taken while in front of Mount Cook in New Zealand. Before we get started, I'll just tell you a bit more about myself. So as you can already see, I'm your typical wanderlusting kind of person and would love to spend all my annual leave each year on traveling. We're not abroad though. My hobbies of choice are usually climbing and snowboarding. So as you can see, I love doing all these outdoorsy things. I live for that basically, but sometimes my fitness would tell me otherwise. All right, so that's the fun things out of the way. Now for the work things. I joined the data school as part of the second cohort, and after some extensive training in both Alteryx and Tableau, I was placed at the Catholic Education Diocese of Parramatta. I was lucky enough to have CDP as a first placement because they use both Alteryx and Tableau quite prolifically, and I was even more fortunate that they got me on for an extended stay as well. Right, so now on to the main part of the TTT talk. I like doing things in threes, mainly because it's a good way of remembering things, and it's also the fact that I only have to do three things and not 10. So here are the topics for today. We're going to start with some basics, so things like what is data security and what is low row level security. Then we're going to take this knowledge into Tableau Desktop itself and construct user filters. Then we're going to cap it off with some user emulators. So that's basically seeing what certain users see and what they can't see. Nothing too creepy there, I promise. I know I've been throwing the term data security around quite a fair bit, so let's start with topic number one. So what is data security? Every organization deals with data one way or another, whether it be mums and dad's corner shop, which may collect phone numbers for the customers, or it could be a large financial institution collecting personal and financial data. This really stresses the importance of having some sort of infrastructure in place to protect the data which is collected, stored, created, whether it be protection from external participants or it could be protection from internal participants as well. After working for some time in an organization, you really do get to appreciate the fact that not everyone is privy to all available data. The role that an individual person plays within an organization usually dictates what they can and what they can't see. To make things easier, let's consider an example of a store. Of course, because we are using Tableau, let's go with the typical superstore data and the concept of a retailer. If I was a manager at a single store, I might only be allowed to see my store's data at its most granular level. So this means who our customers are, what they've purchased, and what's in their order as well. But I will not be able to see another store's data. So that's what you see with these little eye symbols here. So store A cannot see store B, you cannot see store C, and you cannot see store D. So no snooping or anything. Pretty much there wouldn't be a reason for myself or another store manager to see the exact quantities of each item sold and the discounts that's applied to that. That's not really meaningful, and I think that really promotes bad behavior more than good behavior between stores. Yeah, so that's not really meaningful seeing each other. We'll give the analysts in the business something to do and we'll just let them figure out what sells and what doesn't. So this also keeps me in a job when I'm not a hypothetical store manager as well. Alrighty. Let's go with another example and go with someone more senior in the organizational chart here. And we'll go with an area manager as well. So say I'm area manager of New South Wales now. As the area manager of New South Wales, I'd really appreciate to see the high level view of each store, so how much they sell on a weekly basis and all that. But I'd also appreciate to see stuff at a more granular level as well. This is probably because I want to make some comparisons between the two, right? I want to know what sells in store A versus what sells in store B, what could be done better in each store, and pretty much do some kind of quick analysis on the appetite of each demographic as well. And hopefully I can take this to my manager, and some marketing or product strategies can be based from this little bit of analysis. Furthermore, I want to add that because there would be area managers of each jurisdiction, essentially, so one in New South Wales and one in Queensland, there might be another layer of difficulty here, being that they might not really need to see each area's granular detail as well. So yeah, you can see that this gets complicated pretty fast, eh? So just to finish off the organizational diagram, we have the big boss up here as an operations manager. And this person might want to oversee a whole lot of things, but they don't want to really get into the nitty-gritty details. So just to wrap up data security, just envision it like this. This really helps for myself as well. So if you have a power to drive a particular strategy, then I reckon that you should be able to see that data that drives that strategy. And yeah, I will mention, of course, real life scenarios are a little bit more nuanced than this as well. Now that data security is taken care of, let's go over row level security. So row level security is essentially automatically filtering rows of data for a particular user. When a user, say user A here, logs on to Tableau server and opens a workbook, the view that they see may already be imposed by the admin, so they can only see what they're meant to see. This means that what I see in a workbook may be different to what you see on a workbook. I'm just going to note here as well, this is very distinct from Tableau server permissions, which won't be covered today. So the reason why this may be done is there can be a whole array of reasons. So one of the biggest factors might be, let's say, litigation. So if you've seen something, or if you haven't seen something, you can't really be litigated against or sued, because yeah, that's not possible. So that's one of the main reasons for having a security infrastructure such as this in place. All right, so there are a couple ways of implementing data security in Tableau itself. So for the purpose of this presentation, I'll be going through a Tableau Only approach, where this is a method where more maintenance is required. So maintenance can be things like when a new user is added, or if there are changes in positions within an organization as well, that would require a bit of work to be done. But there's also a hybrid method as well, where a mix of Tableau and data source elements are used in conjunction with each other. So the latter of the two may involve some calculated fields, but it's considered the more lower maintenance method of the two. I know, you may have remembered that I like to do things in 3, but what's better than 3? Just 2. All right, so that's pretty much all the slides done for now. Let's jump into Tableau and see how all of this plays out. Okay, so just opening up Tableau, here we go. All right, so this is the first of the 2 methods that I mentioned. This is the Tableau Only method. So let's get started. All right, so let's get some basic chart up for now. So I want to visualize, say, sales by country. So what I'll have to do is double click on country here, bring up all the countries. Just let it do its thinking. There we go. And I want to visualize sales by country. So I will click and drag sales onto color here, and the intensity of the color will show how each country performed sales-wise. And that's seen in the legend in the top right here as well. All right, so that's a basic chart done and dusted. Adding a user filter is quite easy on Tableau. What you have to do is you have to navigate to server in the top pane just here. Click on server. I will mention that you will have to be signed in to Tableau server one way or another. I'm using my organization's login, so the people that you see will be people who who I work with essentially. But I think you can use Tableau online as well, but I haven't explored that side of things yet, and I'm not sure if that's too meaningful anyway, working off Tableau online. All right, so to create a user filter, we just have to go down to create user filter here, and the list of items just on the right hand side is here is already pre-populated from the dimensions that you see on the left here. So there really isn't too much configuring. Tableau already knows that you can filter out by dimensions. So let's start with market as an example. So we'll go into market here. So when you click on that, a window will pop up and it'll prompt you with a whole list of users just here. Let me find myself. So I am Andrew, that's me. Say I'm the top dog in the organization and I want to have a look at everything. So I want to look at all these different markets here. But someone like Blake here, he can be a APAC manager. And let's go with Chantel here, who is the manager of Canada. And let's go with Craig, who is the manager in the US. So I'm just only going to pick a few here, and we're going to OK that. When you press OK, you will notice that a set gets created here, and it will say user filter 1 by default, but you can rename this to something like market user filter. It will be helpful if I typed correctly. So to add a user filter onto the bigger worksheet itself, all you have to do is click and drag the user filter into filters here and drop it right there. When you drop a user filter into filters, it automatically adds it to context. And just as a note, context filters are just under extract filters and data source filters. So they come before everything like dimension filters, measure filters, and table calcs and all that kind of jazz. Okay, so now that that's added, we're just going to stop it right there just for now. I'm not going to go into user emulators as of yet because that's our last topic for the day. So I'm just going to create some other charts just to kind of add to this, and maybe we can put some things in a dashboard later on if we have time. So just as another view, I just want to see sales versus profit in each country. So for now, I'm just going to click and drag country onto rows. Let's just add all the countries there. It doesn't really matter, or to make processing easier, let's just put some countries. So we'll tick those ones for now. All right, so we want to add in sales and profit as well. So I'm just going to double click on sales. I am not going to double click on sales. I am going to click and drag sales into columns just here. And I'm going to do the same thing for profit as well. So we got these two views just here. Okay, so I just noticed that the axes down here are not showing. So just to quickly fix that, you just want to right click on the pill just there and go to show header, and ta-da, the the axis will show itself. Usually for formatting purposes, I do like to remove the axis just at the bottom and instead put the values at the end of the bar itself. But that's just a finicky kind of task, and I can show you that afterwards anyway. All right, so what I do need to do now is I do need to sort these countries on a measure. It's always recommended that you sort on a measure just so you can kind of decipher things well, because obviously you can see that because this chart doesn't have too many values on it, you can see that Australia has the biggest sum of sales here. But some other instances, the differences might not be too well known. So as an example, you don't really know the difference between Afghanistan and Angola without having to hover over the bar itself. So we can see that Angola's 25 grand here, this is 21 grand. They look very similar in size, and because they're apart, you can't really tell which is bigger than the other. So sorting will take care of that. It will rank everything top down. And just for the purpose of this presentation, it's sorted by the sum of sales. So just to cap it off, I did mention that I will remove the axis and I'll add the labels in. So what I'm going to do is click and drag sales onto the label here, and then go into the profit card and click and drag profit into the labels just there as well. Just some quick formatting work with the labels. I'm going to go in here and bolden this just to make it easier to read. I'm also going to make the bars a little bit bigger here as well. And I'm going to do the same thing in profit. So just going into the profit card and boldening that up just there. Much better. And yeah, some formatting. I'm just going to remove this axis because you don't need the double encoding of having all of these labels here as well while trying to read the axis down here. It's just much easier to go off the labels. So I'm going to untick show header, and I'm just going to do a little bit more formatting as well. So go into format, and I want to get rid of these really light lines here. So that's a process of de-inking, highly recommended, makes things look nice and crisp, which is what we want. Okay, so now that that is finished as well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into the first worksheet where we have already added in our user filter, and I'm going to apply that to the second worksheet that we made as well. So by going into this first worksheet, it's a lot easier than having to, say, when you're working on this worksheet, having to click and drag user filters into filter as well. You might forget to do that at times, and it's much easier to do it in one go at the end. So what I'm going to show you is, I'm going to right click on the filter here, and I am going to apply it to worksheets. So at the moment it's selected as only this worksheet, but you can, if you want to apply it to all worksheets using the same data source, you can definitely do that as well, and that might be beneficial for today's presentation, or you can do it to selected worksheets. The instances where you might select just selected worksheets is if you have certain KPIs, like having a KPI for the entire world essentially, that might be beneficial for each market manager to have a look at, just so they can compare those numbers at a high level. And that's exactly what we want. So let's go into there, and we want to apply it to the country sales versus profit sheet, which is just the one that we were just working on as well. So when we OK that and we go back into that worksheet, you can see that that user filter has already been added as well. Nice and easy. Okay, now that the first method is done, which is the Tableau Only method, we're going to move on to the hybrid method. So I'll demonstrate that, but just to start, we're just going to duplicate these, so we don't have to redo it. So instead of naming it Tableau Only method, I am going to rename this as the hybrid method. And we're also going to duplicate this as well, just for the ease of demonstration. Won't rename that. Okay, so we're going to remove the previous user filters that have been applied, remove, and I just typed up a quick table, just going through the username and also the market that that person is linked to. So I'm just going to quickly bring that up just to show you. All right, so this is a mock table. The instances where you might want to use this kind of method is if you have some sort of Active Directory capability, then you would already have these details. You don't have to manually type these details in. So that's why doing something like this is quite dynamic, and it requires much less maintenance over time as well. So just to show you, you have a manager field with the username associated with it, and also the markets that that user is linked to as well. So just recalling, I'm overseeing everything, whereas Blake is the manager of the APAC region, Chantel is Canada, and Craig the US. But in actual reality, Craig is my boss, so he should be on top. But because this is a demonstration, I'm just going to replace him just for these couple minutes. All right, so just going to close that for now. What you'd want to do is to connect that data source as well. So we're just going to go data source in the bottom left pane here, and we're going to add a connection. Going down to Microsoft Excel, just because it's a Excel spreadsheet, navigate to that table that I just showed you, open it up, and Tableau is going to do some processing here. It's going to bring in that table as well, and because there was a market field in the original data source, as you can see just here, it's going to color the data sources separately. So the first one is in blue, so all those fields associated with that data source is in blue, and all the fields associated with the second data source is going to be in yellow, as you just see over here. But yeah, as I mentioned, it recognizes that there is a market field in both of the data sources. It's going to automatically do an inner join on that as well. So to view that connection, we just have to click these two Venn diagram circles here, and it will show you that it performed a inner join on the market field itself. So market field in the original data source and market field in the sheet as well. So when we're looking down here, you can see that the US market is Craig, so that's done the join just there, and it's also done the join for myself as well. Alrighty, so let's go into the workbooks. Okay, now that we're in the worksheet itself, you can notice here that it has a sheet 1 section, so that's the data source that we added in roughly a minute ago. You might recall at the start of this presentation that I mentioned the second method, the hybrid method, requires the use of calculated fields, and to add in a calculated field, all you have to do is go into the top, click down arrow thingamajig here, click on that, and create calculated field. I'm all about that shortcut kind of life, right? So when I'm working on a worksheet, if I want to add in a calculated field, the shortcut for that is the Alt button, A, and C, and that pops up the calculated field there. So I'm just going to name this calculation, say manager verification. And all I wanted to do is leverage the username function. So the username function I'm going to bring up here. Tableau has this handy thing where if you're searching up a formula or an expression, it will give you a rundown of what it actually does. So we want username here, not is username, but username. It will return the username of the current user. So what we're going to do is just a logic statement, or you can do a true-false kind of statement as well. So for the true-false one, you might do something like username equals manager. Manager. Or if you want to do a logic statement, you can do something like if username equals manager, then 1, else 0, and both will achieve the same result in the end. One will result in a Boolean true false, another would result in a 1 or a 0. But my preference is towards this. I'm not sure why, it's just how I'm wired. So let's go with that. So when you OK that, that's going to put it in measures. Because it recognizes the field as a 1 or a 0, it automatically goes into measures. But what we want to do is move that into a dimension instead. So that will just appear just there. We want to make it discrete. And like the user filter we made before, adding this onto the sheet is quite simple as well. All you want to do is click and drag this into filters and make sure that 1 is selected. So 1 usually equates to true, 0 to false. So that's some good practice to get in. So we're just going to apply that there. And we're going to add this into the other worksheet as well. So the other worksheet in question is this worksheet. Alrighty, so that's the hybrid method done. We might run out of time for dashboarding, but that's another story in itself. So let's cap off with the third topic for the day, and that would be user emulators. So user emulators is exactly what it sounds like. You're pretty much emulating a user. Surprise, surprise. Alright, so as an example, just to demo these user filters, let's go back into the Tableau Only method and select a different user. And to select a different user, you just have to go down, navigate to the bottom right section of the screen, which I'm hovering over just here. You want to click the arrow and you want to pick another user. So one of the other users in our demonstration is Blake here. Click on Blake, let Tableau do his thing, and you'll realize that it's filtered Blake just to the Asia Pacific region just here. So that's a Tableau Only method. Let's go into the hybrid method and see how that works out. And surprise, surprise, the exact same thing. And when you're when you're emulating a user, let's go with Chantel here. It will filter everything. It will filter everything in the worksheet and apply the row level security to the data itself. Alright, so that pretty much wraps up the 3 topics that I was going through today. So just to recap, we'll just go back and revisit each of the 3 topics just here. Alright, so topic 1 was what is data security, what is row level security? So as you may remember, data security is important in every organization, especially with such a heavy data culture that's evolving or coming about at the moment. The idea of seeing what you're supposed to see is more important than ever. We then went into Tableau and used 2 methods to create user filters. So the first method being a Tableau only approach, and the other version, the other method being the mix or hybrid method of Tableau and a separate data source. And then we capped off with demonstrating how to emulate a user on Tableau desktop as well. So when we publish all of these workbooks onto Tableau server, the same behaviors that you saw in Tableau desktop just now also happens in Tableau server, but the data or the view will already be filtered out. So taking Craig as an example, who was the manager of the US region, he'll only be able to see the data for the US, and that's strictly imposed as he logs on to Tableau server itself. Okay, so that wraps up about everything for this afternoon. I guess all that's left to say is thanks for coming to my TED Talk. All right, I'm going to open the floor to questions, and let me know if you guys have any questions. I'll be happy to stick around and answer them. All right, thanks again.